And good evening. Good afternoon. I hope you're well. This is your Sensei Al Bob coming to you on your dreamy dreamland with Sensei Al Bob channel on YouTube. Remember, don't believe a word I say. Check it out for yourself. I'm a griot. And what is your griot? I tell you stories that inform and stimulate your mind. So, this is a warning for all those who don't want to stimulate your mind, who don't want to be challenged to check things out for yourself. Well, then you should watch this channel. But for all of you who yearn to ascend your free will soul to a higher spiritual plane, well, welcome aboard. And it's always good to see the first two, and that's AI is always the first to show up. And usually the rest of the cadre shuffles in at their leisure. I'm pretty sure the live chat is working. Let's get the little cursor over there. Get the little thing, yep. So that's still working. So we are, in that window of opportunity. And the weirder things seem, the greater the opportunity. And that's because the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be represented by the sock puppets and the usual suspects, have gotten to the point where their incompetence outstretches incredulity. Right? And there's always the ghost of the machine and the unexpected consequence. So everyone goes on about how our present fearless leader is either the best thing since sliced bread or not quite the stable genius he says he is. Now, all of that doesn't matter because our existence is under the tutelage of love's co-creation. So the stock market is precipitously collapsing. Well, it wasn't really, supported by anything of any great value except freely printed money. The, Federal Reserve that has nothing to do with the federal government. That was a monster that was created on Jekyll Island. Basically manifested a banking cartel that is privately owned by a privately stock-held corporation. It has nothing to do with our government. It's not part of the Constitution. Congress doesn't control it. All it does is the president names the CEO and the Senate soap opera, right? Because after a number of corporations caused the great banking collapse of the savings and loans in 1986, and then after George H. Bush, after Ron, the 10 years of George H., or 12 years of George H. and Ronnie, and really George H. ran the show the 2 years that Ronnie was president, right? Very similarly to Dick Cheney running the show the 8 years that W. was president. And pretty much our government is a marionette extravaganza, right? And we are now seeing the culmination of 250 so years um, of a con game. Our founding fathers were criminals, you know, and it started back then. The newspeak, when they said things like when Washington said, "I cannot tell a lie," well, that's all he could do, right? Basically, our George Washington makes the carrot pinhead look like Honest Abe. And in reality, what's really interesting is how the fact that the carrot pinhead can't lie. I mean, he's a terrible liar, He lies, his mouth opens up and there is no truth there. But it's when Rudy Giuliani tried to explain how there is no lying, it's like, that's the amazing thing. It's like, that's the truth. And, when Pinhead goes on about, the lying fake news, well, he's right because it's corporate owned and it's all propaganda. And so the, stock market is like, falling like a lead brick. And it's not because of the NCV 19, or like I like to call it, the N19, for it's the novel 19, right? All, we have lots of coronaviruses. That's, the flu is basically that. And the flu basically, gets about 1.5 million people in America sick every flu season and kills between 20 and 60,000 people, a year, a season, right? Now, the novel coronavirus is very interesting. It is quicker to infect, right? The regular flu, for every one person sick, it infects two, and this one seems, for every one person sick, it infects between around 5, a little less than 5, like 4.8 or 5. And it seems to not kill as many, but we can't really tell because we don't have valid data. And China, now, if this is just one of those off, when they call it novel, what they're saying is that they've never seen, all these other viruses are very similar. They're the same kind of pathogenic path. And this one doesn't, right? So, and its RNA strand looks like it was manufactured, genetically engineered, a GMO. And so, again, we don't have enough data to really see what this is. And there is also, what do they call it? Interesting data that would reference to the fact that this virus is energetically manufactured, in that the, like all of the Wi-Fi and routers in your home already 60 hertz, already the Internet of Things controlled through the smart grid of our utility, through our smart meters, is also, high energetic microwave frequency. And so the human race in the Wi-Fi, cell phone, Internet of Things is swimming in this frequency, and that our atmosphere is highly inundated with metals. Um, we're living in a very exotic or novel environment, right? And within the construct of, when people go on about how, you know, global warming, earth changes, it's all true. All these things are kind of happening. And how much is manifested by human um, activity or just a trend of our planet, which it goes through. And if you're a student of these trends or these changes, this planet has been through lots of them. We've had already 6 die off um, events. Probably the most notable was when that asteroid hit in the Gulf of Mexico and pretty much killed the dinosaurs and everything else. It threw the whole planet into what they would call a nuclear winter for 2 million years. It was so cold and there was so much ice that it covered North America with 2 miles of ice. Right, so now we've also had great tsunamis, which seem to come from pole shifts, and our planet. We are going through a plethora of changing motifs. Like we are in a grand solar minimum, so our Earth is getting hit with less and less and less, uh, you know, solar energetic particles, and that is one reason why we're not having global warming. We're actually cooling down, and the media doesn't like to talk about that. And the poles, move around a good deal, and about every 5 years, they have to retweak all of the devices that enable navigation to be changed. But it is changing so much that they are having to, especially the global positioning satellites, they're having to tweak them almost every 2 or 3 months, right? So there's great change going on. And our stock market, they say, oh, we don't know what's going to go on with this virus, so the stock market's collapsing, right? We don't know what's going to go on with this, that, and the other thing. So, the stock market hates, not knowing what's going on. But the real reason why the stock market is collapsing is that, again, like I said, first the banking institutions created the savings and loan collapse, which wiped out about 30,000 banks. So we went from having about 30,000 banks to having about 20. And then between when Bill Clinton probably was the most severely radical game changer of our country. So he got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act, so the banking could decontrol banking completely. Right? There was no one watching the hen house. Right? We gave the wolf the keys to the hen house. Right? And we had so many decontrolling and tax cuts that we were just poured out economically. And so when the '08 collapsed, it was because we were, there was no money, period. And there were so many scams and Ponzi schemes and the .com motif. People were putting billions of dollars in the stock market with new, you know, .com businesses that weren't making any money. I mean, there was no serious business plan, right? So, except, just this false hope that, oh, I'm going to make money in the stock market. So people put it in there. And that's exactly what caused the Great Depression. Because in the 20s, people were putting money, they had their own .com. It's called radio. And so this keeps happening over and over and over again. And people are just so greedy and stupid that they go for this, right? And that's one of, own nothing, have nothing, you know, don't usually have more than $400 in my bank account at any time. Well, I that's the most I have in my bank account. Normally I have like $11 in my bank account. So we find ourselves where all these things are coming together, right? And so after '08, the Federal Reserve, which is a privately owned stock-held corporation, printed money backed by nothing, gave it to the banks. That was part of the cartel, and the banks lent this money to corporations under this process called financial easing. And what is that? It's called financial easing is like free money. And so these corporations took that money, and it was backed by you, the taxpayer, to pay off the debt. And the companies, Boeing and Sperry and Raytheon and General Motors, General Electric, Exxon, BP, they all took that free money, and instead of expanding their business and employing more people and getting better paid jobs, no, like they said they were going to, no, they didn't do that. What they did was they bought their stock and drove up the stock market. That's why it was almost at 30,000, right? Didn't quite get there, right? And then, this virus came and gave the excuse to deflate, right? Just tip the pins right out from under the stock market. And I would say that the stock market, in, between now, and April 1st, which will be a good benchmark, the stock market will probably go below 20,000. And by July 4th, the stock market will probably be at 8,000, right? And the carrot pinhead will blame the Democratic Party because they're communists. Give me a break. Pretty, communist, And I would say that they're not going to put Bernie up. Even if he were to win 60% of the ballot there, they'd find some excuse to put some moron in, like, Joe or Mini Mike. Those are the two guys who I think will get in there, right? The rest is just window dressing. And Bernie, just like the last time, won't do anything about it because he's part of the passion play, I mean, what's his name? Has a great show on Showtime called Cartoon President. Right? And it is. It's what we got. And so, before, so those two guys, one of those two morons, get to be our Democratic representative for president, Donnie will win pretty much hands down. But if Bernie gets in, what we will have is we will have October surprise of martial law because with the NDAA, we're already there, right? And so with the Patriot Act, we're already there. There are many things that have been passed through the sock puppet Congress in the last 20 years that basically we are, where Germany was, Well, look at that. 20 minutes. It's 9:30, and there's no one here. Uh, you know, YouTube algorithm has said, "Oh, we don't want anybody to be part of this conversation." Anyway, but this is an opportunity because things are so out of balance, so out of whack. This is a time, and this is the beauty of humanity. This always occurs, at the worst of times. That's when beauty, you know, comes asunder, And and it's usually when we have our back to the wall that we become our better angel. And so it's all mounting up pretty, pretty amazing. And people are kind of getting scared. And, the thing that will. Did you ever read the book or see the movie? Childhood end. That's what will occur, A false flag of an alien invasion, and the aliens will look just like Lucifer. And they'll be really nice guys, and they'll bring peace to the earth, and everyone will have abundance, and everything will be great, and it'll be Lucifer, right? You just have to kind of take the mark. And the real question is, are you going to go that way, or are you going to basically, represent, serve, instead of serving Lucifer, are you going to serve, love's co-creation, right? And it'll make it pretty difficult not to take the mark, And because, man, if you get that, you'll have all the money in the world, and, you'll have, everything. If you don't take the mark, you're going to be an outcast, a criminal, run down. Anyway, so, there's AI back. Come on, AI, you got to, join the conversation. I could see you, I could feel you, but, where are you? Come on, speak up. Anyway, if we don't start a chat by 30:30, I'm going to go to bed, get a good night's sleep. We're supposed to have, we could have like 6 to 20 inches of snow. It's snowing in Ithaca, my old town. I lived in Ithaca for 3 years. I was at Cornell between 88 and 91. I left Ithaca in 91. And it was a great town. The only thing I couldn't stand was the lake effect. And they're having that right now. They're having between 40 and 60 inches of snow between like 6 o'clock this evening and 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. And that would happen virtually every week when I lived there. Now, the spring, summer, and fall, oh man, it was delicious. The summers there, you could not beat those lakes and the rolling hills. Oh, it's a beautiful place. Beautiful, beautiful. Just amazing. And in Trumansburg, it had the tallest waterfall in North America. And I used to go hiking around there, and it wasn't a gigantic, it wasn't like Niagara Falls, but it was the tallest. And so if you went down at the bottom, it was like a rainforest down there because the water sprayed everywhere. And on really, really hot days, you could go there, and I used to go there and camp nearby. And the whole area was like air, all that mist was like air conditioning. And you could go out, and I would go out there and ease myself underneath the major fall of the waterfall, and it was like you were getting massage. You were getting like really pummeled by water, and you had to be careful. You had to know where to stand, but if you eased yourself into it, oh man, it felt so good. It was like you were getting massaged by King Kong. It's yeah. So there were they had a lot of great wineries there, and they had some really sacred spots of the Iroquois Nation. And I was a friend of the Iroquois Nation. Grandpa David, who, see, the interesting thing about New York State and the Iroquois Nation was that when the Dutch showed up, they weren't like the Spanish or the French or the English, where they killed all the guys and they just took the land. They basically married into the family, right? And so basically, New York State was rented by the Dutch, right? And the lease was for 99. Well, no, the lease was in perpetuity, which the Latin word meant forever. And so, because they were married into the family, they didn't really, it was okay. But as time went on, and white people, just kept breaking they couldn't. The Iroquois Nation couldn't believe that these people lied so bad. Anyway, so at a certain point, they changed the law, and in perpetuity meant 99 years. So when I was up there in 88, 89, 90, 91, the that 99 years was coming up to end, and the state of New York, about 80% of it legally was supposed to go back to the Iroquois Nation, and so that was never going to happen. So they had to negotiate, right? And a friend of mine knew Grandfather David, who was the elder of the Iroquois Nation, who was going to negotiate this, and he needs somebody to drive him to, Albany to negotiate, like once or twice a month. And they, his grandson, David, what was David's last name? Oh, it escapes me. But anyway, he said, Al, can you drive my grandfather? I said, sure, Dave, I can do that. And so we introduced, and that's how the Rainbow Gathering got to be put on, because, see, New York State has no national forests, right? It's all private property. And there's only little bits, when this deal was sweat, there was a few thousand acres of sacred properties um, in New York State that were, ceded back to the uh, Iroquois Nation, right? And there was 1,000 acres or so up near Trumansburg that we did the Rainbow Gathering on, because it was sovereign Iroquois land. The federal government couldn't say anything about it, right? So now the county could say something about it, but the federal government couldn't. And when we convinced, I got hornswoggled into facilitating that gathering in upstate New York, the Rainbow Gathering, and I guess it was 89, 90, somewhere there. Might have been 90, the summer of 90. Because I left in 91, and I lived on that site for almost a whole year. I moved in March and got the site together. Anyway, so when I was hornswoggled into being the facilitator, a friend of mine brought me to this meeting of the Rainbow Gathering that was there, right? Now, I had known of the Rainbow Gathering and gone to a number of their events because my good friend Garrick Beck kind of started it. I mean, that's the myth, No one person started the Rainbow Gathering, but, a group of people did. And I'd gone to a lot of their things. But so anyway, A friend of mine took me to this meeting where there were a bunch of people going on about, oh, I didn't tell them to come here. Oh, no. Because they had gone to a national gathering, this group of Ithitonians, and, they were white bourgeois people who had gone to Cornell or Ithaca College, had settled in there, got families, owned houses, had businesses. Then they went to this gathering, did a bunch of psychotropics, and felt free and free love, and offered, uh, the council for the gathering to be in Ithaca. Well, you know, Rainbow Family has politics like any other organization, and it had already been chose to be someplace else, like in Ohio or something. But the Rainbow guys, a good portion of them are road dogs, and they follow bands. And the biggest band followers of the Rainbow Gathering was the Grateful Dead. So the Grateful Dead was having a you know concert in New England somewhere, and 91 went right through Ithaca and right through New England. So the majority of the people who were going to be heading to the National would be going right past Ithaca. So the council, said, oh, hey, you guys could have, if you could set something up, people could drop on by, on their way, right? And so that group had, basically tasked, somewhere between a couple of hundred and 20,000 hippies were going to show up in that neighborhood, right? And so these people were a little stressed out because, like I said, they had families and kids and mortgages and businesses, and they really didn't portray themselves as, they were more like sustainability, tree huggers rather than rainbow hippies, right? So I was taking this meeting, and my friend volunteered me to be, um, you know, the facilitator. And before I could say anything, everyone can sense that, good. And they all ran out of the place. There were about 12 people there. He said that. They said, I second, I did it. Boom, we all voted. Yes, 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 yes. And bing, they ran out, right? And leaving me there with my friend who was just laughing his butt off. And these two women. And one of the women was this woman named Kamala. She was a really beautiful sister. And it was her house, right? And she had a nice little business with her husband, and she had two boys. Anyway, and her best friend. And they looked at me, and I was like, huh? And they said, oh, we'll help you out. We'll, and I said, okay. So I did my homework, and I looked around. I found, first off, there was no, I knew all the rules, all the regs. I'd been, like Garrick, I'd been inundated by Garrick for 20 years about all this. So I called him up, and he emailed me, all the, they're very well organized, Rainbow Gathering. So he sent me a whole bunch of not propaganda, but like information. It's the first thing you set up, and so when people show up, they have flyers on, how to camp and how to, set up a kitchen and how to, do slit trenches and how to set up health and kids and all those kind of things. And so I got all that stuff, and I'm looking at it, and part of it is the legal rep, And so, you do these gatherings in a national forest because you don't need a permit, right? Because you can camp in a national forest without a permit. And you can, so if you have 20,000 people show up, it's just, hey, I'm camping with 20,000 of my closest friends, right? So that's how they roll, and they go about it, in a constitutional kind of way. And so, so it's always a big, there's a whole bunch of, Forest Service guys and the sixes, they all carry guns, so they're all always harassing the, they have their own intelligence operation against the Rainbow guys. Anyway, so I, I'm doing all my homework and I'm saying, where can we do this? And now I'm driving, I'm the driving Miss Daisy, grandfather David, once or twice a month to Albany to negotiate this settlement. And so that's like 2 hour drive from Ithaca or more. And so we talk about everything. And he likes me. And he actually knew my, you know, Hopi grandfather David in the Four Corners, right? All these Davids, they know each other. So, he looked upon me as his grandson because his grandson, David Yarrow, what's his name? And all these Iroquois look like they all have blonde hair and blue eyes. I mean, because they all married into the Dutch families. Anyway, so grandfather David said, well, you could do that gathering. We have 1,000 acres that is Iroquois land, and we are a sacred separate nation. It's but I'm the head cheese. Yeah, you can do it there. I know you'll respect it. So we drove out there one day, and I guess it was March, and it could have been February. It was really cold, and the ground was like concrete. And we drove in. He had an old Jeep, and we drove in, and he walked me around the site, and it was about 1,000 acres, and about 300 acres was forest. About 100 acres was wetlands and lake, and the rest were these three humongous, large meadows for cows to graze in. Right now, the cows hadn't grazed in that property for a couple of years, and so the cow pies were pretty minimal, and everything was non-trampled down, and there was a ton of healing herbs, elecampane, golden seal, you name it, it was growing out in those meadows, and nothing was eating them, so it was all over the place. And between 76 and 88, I was doing a lot of other things, but I had a healing practice in New York, especially between 75 to 77. When I lived in Pearl Street, I had a real serious practice. I had a place, and people came, and I was teaching at the Swedish Institute, and I was teaching herbology at the Green Door, which was run by the Theosophical Society. So, I was pretty up on my healing skills, and so I knew my herbs pretty well. And grandfather Dave was herbalist. His wife was really great, and David Yarrow's wife was also a great herbalist. And there was a guy who was studying with him, and his name was Second Son or something like that. And he's now the big whoop-de-doo. Well, I don't know now, but he became the big whoop-de-doo herbalist in Asheville, North Carolina. Came and visited me and saw that it was such a plum that he stayed. He said, why don't you run a practice? I said, no, I do other things. So when he showed up, I kind of was already on my way out, and Asheville was already becoming the hipster jungle. When I lived in Asheville between 91 and 98, Asheville was great. There was nobody there, and that's why it's so much fun. There were a lot of great people, handful of really great people, but really, it wasn't a hipster jungle yet. And that was the same when I was in Ithaca. It was the same kind of thing. It was a lot of great people, but it wasn't a hipster jungle. And then a number of things happened with the government where actually Ithaca and the three counties seceded from the Union, and that's a whole nother story. And that was another reason why I did this rainbow gathering, another reason why I did the thing with grandfather David, right? So we had the site, and the first thing I did, once I did all my homework and figured out the strategy of it, I called up the because I was the head, I didn't have to worry about NERF, New England Rainbow Family, because they just said, "Oh yeah, go do it," and we don't want to do anything about it. Don't call us until it's happening, and then we can take all the credit for it. So, Jimmy, whatever his name, moron boy, who thought, he was like Warren. He was as much Indian as uh, as Warren was an Indian. Anyway, so I had total carte blanche. I had these two really great um, Swami mommies to be my cohorts. And the first thing I said, okay, we're going to go visit all the powers that be, and that was in Trumansburg, where Watkins Glen Racetrack was, and that was the big moneyed like thing of those three counties, right? I mean, Cornell was too. They had more money than God, but they were like on another universe. So anyway, I called up the Chamber of Commerce, right? I said, "So who's the mayor? Who's the county commissioner? Who's the person in charge of the racetrack and the facilitation of that? Who's the sheriff? Who's the chief of police?" So I got all their names, and I asked that person. So of all of these people, who's the one who has the most sway? And the guy said, "Oh, that's definitely the sheriff because his brother is the mayor, and the other brother owns the two banks in town. So that family is the powerhouse of three, of that 2.5 counties." I said, "Okay." So I called up the sheriff and said, "Hi, and I gave him my real name, and I said, "I'm over here at Cornell, and I am representing, grandfather David at the, Iroquois Nations, things with the state of New York, and I am going to facilitate a rainbow gathering on their property. So don't have to worry about the feds. We're not going to, and it's all, you don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about this. But we're going to be doing it in your county, right? And I want to come visit you. And if you could get all, and I named all the people that the guy in Chambers of Commerce told me, and we can have a meeting at your office there. I'll come to you, and I have a whole, plan of how this, operation plan, and I've taken the federal permit uh, uh, thing for doing an event, and I've taken the state permit for doing an event, which I don't need because it's going to be on, but I'm going to do it anyway for you so you can see exactly what we're going to do. Because you're used to, whenever you do things at Watkins Glens, like concerts and stuff like that, I'm going to use the same kind of process that. And the guy goes, "Oh, that sounds great. Sure. Let me look at my calendar. How about next week on Wednesday?" And I said, "Fine. I'm going to bring my crew and we'll come see you. What time?" He says, "Oh, why don't you come around, 10 a.m. and maybe we'll go have lunch afterwards." I said, "Oh, I always love lunch." So we show up, and he's got all, those people and a few others, and I come in a suit. Now normally I don't wear a suit. I'm like hobo kind of looking guy. I mean, the whole time, when all the colleges I worked in, they used to always get up. So why don't you just wear a sports jacket? Stop wearing your pajamas. You know, get rid of those bunny slippers. And I bought really nice shoes, and I had a really nice suit, and I brought Cam and her friend. What was her name? Artren, something like that. Anyway, so we showed up, and these two women were in their 30s and really gorgeous. Really, they were like royalty, really tall and really, and they wore really nice clothes. The three of us wore really nice clothes, smelled good, and walked in. And the guy, we knocked on the door. The secretary brought us into the conference room, and all these guys sitting there, and they were like, right. And I came, and I had copies of the plan and everything, and I gave a copy to each one, and I had photographs of the site, and I gotten maps from DOT, so all the highways, the access points, where the fire departments were, everything you could think of, I had. I could, in triplicate for each one of those guys, and they were like, "Whoa, these guys got it down." So I go, "Okay, so here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it. But I want you to tell me how you want us to do it. What I've given you is just a preliminary, just to, show you where it is, what it's doing, all the things we expect. But how do you want us to do it? We want to do it how you want us to do it so you will feel comfortable. And we want you to be part of this event. We're not going to be like coming in and snubbing our nose at you guys. We want you to be part of this, right? And this is going to be, here it is, March. This thing's going to be on July 4th. So it's going to be, in March from, March to July, right? And so they were like, whoa. And so they were really, and this one guy, he was like Mr. Stressed Out, right? He was he wasn't the sheriff. The sheriff was pretty cool. Um, but the emergency management, the fire guy, the ambulance guy, hospital guy, he did all of this emergency stuff, right? And he was a little tweaked out. And one Kamala said, Bob, boy, you look a little here. Let me help you with this. And he goes, help me with what? He goes, well, your blood pressure is really high. And she was a nurse, and she was a healer too, and she just pegged what was wrong with this guy, right? So she goes over and kind of adjusts him in his chair and says, she goes, Al, come over here, do a little cranial sacral on Bob. And, and I put him right out. And he went, and then he was like, he kind of was breathing deep, and every muscle in his body relaxed. And, little tears were coming out of his eyes. And then his eyes fluttered open. And he goes, what did you just do to me? And I said, well, how do you feel, Bob? He said, I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. It's amazing. You guys. And so we then adjusted everyone, the 9 guys there, the chief of police, the mayor, the guy who owned the 2 banks, you know, everybody, right? And they were like, ah. And then they took us to their country club, and we had a really, really nice lunch, right? And so the sheriff said, okay, I'm going to be the guy who, you don't have to talk to the rest of these guys. I'll talk to them. You just talk to me. And I said, not a problem. So, you know, I said, how about, what are you doing, Fridays? I said, what's this week? When can we go on site and we walk it and talk it? We'll have my father David there, and David Yarrow, his grandson, and, you know, the 2 girls here. And so he says, yeah, I'm going to bring the DOT guy, right? So the DOT, because he's the road. So we walk the site, and the DOT guy goes, well, how many people? I said, I don't know, somewhere between 300 and 20,000. And so the guy goes, well, let's see. Here's here's the interstate. Here's the county road that comes from the interstate to, the other county road, the smaller county road, the, neighborhood road. And then here's the roads that go into the Indian site. And he goes, normally everything from the county road on, we don't do anything to those roads, But, if it's going to be a rainy season, this area floods over here. And we've been planning to put in culverts and, you know, regrade a good deal of this. So if it really rains hard, normally these roads flood out. Yeah, there's 30 people live on here. Yeah, they pay taxes, but we kind of ignored them. But we've been planning to take care of all that, and this is a good excuse to do all of that. So around May, end of April, May, they brought crews and culverts and stone and graders and bulldozers and front end loaders and all kinds of equipment there. And they really did a friggin' amazing job. And so from the county road, which is the next road coming into the site, was a county road too, but it wasn't paved. So they paved that, right? And they put big culverts and made almost bridges. And they probably did $200,000 worth of work on all these roads, to the point where they put culverts and stone into the Indian site. And where we decided we were going to have the parking lot, they basically did the same thing into that parking lot. They didn't put stone because that parking lot was also going to be have cows on it some time. They like circulated the cows, so they weren't going to put stone in the whole thing, but they graded the property so if it rained real hard, it wouldn't be really muddy. The water would run off, into culverts and then into the streams and then into that lake, like it should. I mean, and so Grandfather David and David Yarrow, they were totally got what they wanted to their property, the Indian property. So it was like win-win for everybody. And so, like I said, the county spent close to 200 grand, and they were happy to do it. They've been planning to do all of this, and they finally said, "Okay, we'll do it." And so, and in that time, we were developing the site of where the gathering was going to be. And so, the sheriff asked me. So we had, the guys who their discipline is about how water rolls and where water is and all the above. So that guy, the head hydrologist guy, or what do they call those guys, was there one day. And I had, end of February, middle March, I drove my big truck there and I made a campsite for myself, right? And so parking was here, and welcome home path was here, and the meadow was there, and camping was up in the forest, and the lake was over there. And so we had to figure out where to put Kitty Village, where to put CALM, Center for Alternative Living Medicine, where to put Info, and so we're laying it out, and so there with Grandfather David, who knows his land like the back of his hand. David Yarrow knows it like the back of his hand. His David Yarrow's wife, who's really a Swami mommy, and she loved the two women who were working with me. And so we were a great little crew. And so that guy was going, "So where's your drinking water going to come from?" I said, "Well, there's a pond over there, and there's loads, wetlands over there. There's got to be some kind of spring or something around here, isn't there?" He goes, "No." I said, "What?" He goes, "Well, this is the Finger Lakes. This is one big sponge. There really aren't too many, it depends on what, type of hill and what kind of rock. And this place doesn't have springs. It has lots of water, but there's nothing potable. There are no springs that you can drink from." And I said, So the sheriff is there, and he goes, "Well, my cousin, he has a water bottling company, spring water, because there are loads of springs. There just weren't any there. There was loads of springs all over the place, but not there, right?" So he goes, he has this big stainless, 30,000 gallon stainless steel tanker that he, um, brings to the racetrack for water for the racetrack. And he, I'll ask him and he'll probably give you a good deal, 30,000 gallons, that should last you, at least, maybe 3 of those for the whole thing probably would take care of it. And so we, him and I, after our little meeting, and I leave those people, I get in his police car and we go visit his cousin. And the guy is an amazing guy, right? So I get in his car and we drive back, and the DOT guy is still there, the water guy is still there, and we work it all out. And he says, "Okay, he has the DOT guy say, 'Okay, I'm going to bring this big, tanker truck, and it's going to put it right here. So grade it, put some stone culverts. So, in the month and a half, we'll bring maybe three or four of these tanker trunks in, and so we need to be able to get in and get out and turn around, and I want to put it in a high spot so that the water, and he had like 20 miles of PVC pipe that he lent us, and we had water to go straight from that truck to, and we laid out where we were going to put all the kitchens. So I don't know any other rainbow gathering that ever had, um, you know, piped in water to every kitchen. Most of the gatherings you had to go hike the water in, but here we were going to have sinks, and they would just, turn on the faucet and have water. And that guy also had a propane company, right? So at Welcome Home, where you walk into, we had what we called a bliss bunny camp. People who would show up who were bliss bunnies, meaning they've never been to a gathering, knew nothing about it, had no camping gear, and had nothing. Didn't have a bowl. And, one of the hygiene things is everyone has their own bowl, right? We don't supply silverware, so you got to bring a spoon and a bowl, cup. Anyway, so this guy set up showers and put hot water heaters and propane tanks. So I don't know any other gathering that ever had, and it had like 12, 20 showers, that you could go take a nice hot shower, right? Unlimited water, hot water. It was really amazing, right? And what else was amazing about it? So I had all spring to lay this stuff out. And I had a pretty good crew because I had all these kids from Ithaca College who were, because Kamala's friend, Arian or whatever her name was, she was a teacher at Ithaca College. And those kids were like, well, let's do that. Whereas the Cornell kids were, not so much. I had a few of those guys, but most of the crew was from Ithaca College. And so we had a nice, starting in April, we had a nice campsite for the seed camp, and they come all the time and bring food and tools and party favors, and it was just the most fun. And Rainbow Gathering, three most fun things are being a scout, finding the site, um, seed camp, setting it up, and cleanup. Because the stuff people leave behind is, I have so many tents and camping gear that I've cleaned up, from Rainbow Gatherings. It's just amazing. Anyway, so we did that, and it was an amazing success. And we had more people, and this wasn't the national gathering. This was just like the passing through gathering, and so I didn't seek to be the facilitator. I didn't seek to be the guy in the spotlight. It was just shoved upon me, and what I did was I involved as many people as I could, so I could everyone. It was all our endeavor, not mine, right? And but I was always, hey, you got to talk to Al. Al's the guy. And that's really where I got my name, Al, because Grandfather David gave me that name. Uh, because and I accepted it only because other tribal people that I was with called me Al too, and I would say, "Oh no, I'm too young to be Al. I'm too because you get a tribal name, and and so he was about the Iroquois were like the fifth group that's Grandfather, you're Al, okay." So that's where I got the name Al, and it's so close to my name that Alfonso. I've been a lot of different Als. So, and it was like amazingly smooth, right? And everyone was just affected by how blissful that whole thing was, and that's why we had close to 20,000 people. It wasn't even a national gathering. The national gathering in Ohio was, not as nobody. There were people who came traveled from the dead and stopped with us for a few days and then went on to the the National, and then came back because they said, "Oh, those guys, the place sucks. It smells. It's a terrible sight. There's nothing going on. Everybody's complaining. This place, no one's complaining. Everyone's doing it. Everyone wanted to work in the kitchen. Everyone wanted to do something. Everyone wanted to help." And the two amazing things were, so the guy who we adjusted, he set up a little, you know, not so much on site, but just down the road where, everybody was related to everyone in this thing. So his cousins owned the two big gas stations off of 91, right? And 91 was only, I don't know, 8 miles from not so much the site, but the road into the I wouldn't call it a res. It was a sacred site, not a reservation, but we called it the res. And so there was two. So the two big gas stations, really rich ones, were right off the things, but they had a couple of more sprinkled down the county road between there and where you turned on to that site. So the emergency medical guy set up a little. He put a truck there and uh, you know and a bus and a tent, right? And basically, those guys, the firemen, the cops, all hung out there, and then changed into their shorts and sneakers and went on site and danced and had fun with everybody without their uniforms on. But everyone knew who they were, and so they were like our big brothers. They were very protective of what was going on, and no one got arrested. And when I met, so the emergency medical guy and the sheriff guy brought me to their cousin who was owned these 4 or 5 gas stations, and so he did pretty good by that, especially the two big ones right up the interstate. And the two big ones, he had a really pretty good restaurant in each, right? Like truck stop, good restaurant. And so he was our supplier of like food, of vegetables and whatever we needed. And his gas stations, had stores that you could get everything from blankets to lighters to, you know. So that guy basically was our supplier, right? Anyway, so I said, listen, there's going to be 20,000 people cruising through here. And they're going to need everything. And I gave him a big list of all the stuff that you kind of need at a rainbow gathering. So he made $2.4 million for that gathering. You know, the 18 days that the large crowd came through, he made $2.4 million. And so he was truly, a businessman's businessman. He kept, had everything in spreadsheets and all that. So when and then another 4 years, because that thing turned over so well, we did another rainbow gathering in New England and Vermont and did a couple more. And everybody, oh, Al, can you help us out? Can you be our scout? Because Red Dog and Moon Bear and Sun Dragon and who else? About Richie and a few other folks were the scouts. And scouting was so much fun because we were just low renting it and sleeping out and, basically, being, well educated homeless people like I am now. And that was the most fun because for those guys were really, we traveled so many miles and went through so many things um, that we were in Arkansas when Bill Clinton was governor, and we were near the minor airport, and we saw them flying in stuff and dropping things, and these guys were all ex-military. There were a lot of ex-military people in the Rainbow Gathering because they're kind of road dogs, and so we were whenever we traveled around, we were not seen. You know, because we walked, we hiked, uh, we had a car, so we drove ourselves, and So that was very interesting. I got to see what kind of person Bill Clinton, what the Clinton, mafia was, and you know, who was, his, who was his ilk was the CIA. It was the Iran Con. He was part of the Iran Contra scene, and that's how he got to be president. Anyway, so that was a very interesting. So being um, part of the rainbow scene. So I did it for 4 years, not 100% all the time, but in that period between Thanksgiving and the 4th of July, it's kind of the uh, the rainbow motif. So and after that, you know, there are a lot of people. Like if you go to XRATTED and you read X-rated, my first story, it's about that. It's about 2014 when I had gotten really sick, and I hobbled into a rainbow gathering in Tennessee, and and that gives a very good. If you read that story um, about that rainbow gathering, all the characters are really real people. Their names are a little bit changed, but they were basically all my rainbow friends, and they're still there. They're still doing it. And so after those 4 years, I kind of got a little. We did a gathering in West Virginia, and I didn't facilitate, and I had other things to do, and my friends, and it was about 3 years after I had been doing it pretty seriously, and then I kind of said I'd give up because the Vermont gathering was a fiasco, and it only was successful because it was a miracle. God intervened, and no one died. But Jimmy Pinhead, wanted to have it at the site. We found a really great site in New Hampshire, Mount Musalaki, right? And there's a college on the other side, pretty fancy college, and they were going to give us $30,000 and whatever we needed to put that gathering on because they thought it was going to be cool for their kids. And it was a beautiful site, and we spent about 3 months fixing it up. Uh, the Forest Service had clear organic roads to get the logs out, so the roads were amazing, in great shape. And again, it was just right over there was 91, so the interstate was so you could get to it really easy. But it was on top of a mountain, and it had a gigantic lake and running water and drinking water everywhere. And because they clear cut us, there was wood everywhere. So we spent a month, and the college, what was the name? Dartmouth gave us, their guys who, they had tractors and front end loaders and backhoes for that college. So they got their crews over to help us, and we cleared out 100 acres, right? That was on the edge of the forest that hadn't been decimated. And we cleaned it up and made piles, and, we had gotten, a bunch of PVC pipe and made a dam, and again had piped water to kitchens, and was not as amazing as the Ithaca site was, but it was getting there. And when we had spring council to decide where we were going to have it, and we had three sites. We had the Musalaki site. We had this one in Vermont, which was a postage stamp, and it was had no parking, had no access, had no drinking water, and it was in a super duper rarefied environmental area. There were all these kind of plants that if you stepped on them, you got $1,000 fine, right? And there was this other place that was like a toxic waste dump, right? And this one girl who was very shapely and free with her body, she obviously was a MK Ultra butterfly, and she wanted us to have the gathering in this toxic waste dump. That would probably it was broken. It was just a dangerous, terrible sight, and she would sleep with anyone who would vote for having it there. So we're having this meeting, And I said, you guys are nuts. You want me to be your facilitator, dude? Well, we're gonna do. The scouts, the people who know about this. We have picked Musalaki, right? So that's where we're gonna do it. And Jimmy said, "Oh, we're gonna do it in Vermont." And the shapely girl said, "Oh no, we're gonna do it on the toxic waste dump." And so Jimmy was the high honcho of New England Rainbow Family. So I said, "Okay, we're gonna have a council on this. We're going to first visit all three sites, and we will first visit the toxic waste site, and then the next weekend we're going to go and camp out on the Vermont site, and then the third weekend, when we make up the decision, we're going to go to Musalaki, where we have a really nice camp already. We have a kitchen, we have everything ready. And we'll be able to see, and then there we will decide, right? So we do that. We go to the waste dump, we go to the Vermont site, and then we go to Musalaki. And it's like everyone goes, yeah, Musalaki. Oh, this is great. Oh, look how we got running water. Oh, look at all this wood piled up. Oh, look at this amazing road. Oh my God, the bus village is amazing. Oh, the parking is great. Oh, look at that forest for camping. Oh, look at the meadow. We had a 600-acre, I mean, gigantic, like 3 football fields that we had them level off, and we put grass seed on it, so it's like a golf course. And it had trees all around it, so you could, like, be in the shade so you wouldn't get. Anyway, and we had a boogie meadow, and, it was like, and if we had spent another month during sea camp, we could have made this thing unbelievable. But so we have, everyone agrees that Musalaki is by far the best site, in every way imaginable, right? But Jimmy has all the votes. So when we have this consensus vote, it's like me and the other four scouts vote for Musalaki, and, you know, all of the guys who had sex with the shapely girl voted for the toxic waste dump. But Jimmy had, it was just like what the Democratic convention's going to be. Jimmy was like the DNC, so he had the majority of you know the votes, and so it was going to be in Vermont. I said, "Fine, you guys go have a good time up there. We're just going to stay here. We'll have a nice time. The kids from Dartmouth will come, and Dartmouth will give us a bunch of cash, and we'll have a nice party. So go have a good time. See you later. Bye." Anyway, so we stayed there. When they were trying to get it together, and they were having real problems. They had real problems with the cops, and they were having real problems with the lady who owned everything, right? And so, we were there at Musalaki in April and May, and it's just about end of May, beginning June, and they all come over and they beg us, please, please, please come back, help us. Oh, it's going to be terrible. But I said, so let's have it here at Musalaki. Oh no, we can't. We've already told everyone's going to be in Vermont. Everyone's going to come to Vermont. We can't change that because everyone's going to. And the four of us said, man, okay. So we went there, and I had already talked to the sheriff of that neck of the woods, and I had already talked to the lady. I've always, after I did that thing in Ithaca, the thing you do is you go find the bank, the person who has the most money in the county, and the guy who has the most power, and you say, okay, this is going to happen here, but I want you guys to be in charge of it. Tell us how you want it done, and we'll do it that way. And that really goes a long way to get a community. And then you say, look how much money you're going to make, right? So I had already met those people, right? And the reason why they came, and they already, my crew, Red Bear and Sun Dragon and Teom, and we were, our little logo was, when things get weird, the weird get professional. And so the lady who was in control, who owned the town, the little town at the bottom of the valley where the site was, it was off county, Vermont Highway 100. It's kind of right up there near, you know, whatever lake that is that separates one state from the other. But anyway, so, and it was a terrible little road. I mean, everything about that site was terrible. There was no drinking water. There was, and there was all these things. You stepped on this, it's $1,000 fine. And the feds really didn't want us there. But the sheriff and the county commissioner and this lady who owned everything, you know, they said, they didn't like the feds telling them what they could and couldn't do. So they said, okay, we're going to throw in behind you guys. So as long as Al and his buddies are going to, represent, we're down with it. If Jimmy and those other chuckleheads, forget about it, we'll let the feds eat them alive. So that was one reason, because, a whole bunch of our other friends who were not there but communicating to us from all over the country said, oh, come on, Al, please do this, please, please. So we did it. And that's a whole nother story. And it turned out okay. But that's really what soured. And then when West Virginia happened, again, so I kept getting further and further away from being Mr. Facilitator. I would come and have a good time and do my little thing. I would set up my healing temple, and that's all I would do. I wouldn't be part of CALM. I wouldn't, do any of the other kind of facilitating things, but I would, be there and be happy and interact with folks and, be the counselor guy that I am. And I'd have my little healing temple, and, that was, and when we'd have 4th of July, 4th of July is very nice because from midnight of 4th of July, beginning of 4th of July, till high noon, everyone meditates. They don't talk. They just meditate for peace and love, right? And I'd have, and there would be the main meadow where you'd have our meals, and then on the 4th of July, whoop-de-doo. And I would, see, find, okay, let's main meadow. I would find the spot that was between Kitty Village, CALM, Center for Alternative Living Medicine, and Main Meadow, and I would find the best kind of shaded place where I could hang my hammocks and put my little big, I have kind of a tarpy tent that, maybe 100 people can get under if it's really raining hard. So it was like a place where people could, if they got too fried out there in the meadow, they could come and lie down and relax. And, I would get a lot of water there, and I'd have fruit there, and, just a place where people who got a little bit too baked could come and relax, right? Mellow out. And, that was that was my tradition. And a lot of people who went to a gathering had service kind of, they ran kitchens or did CALM or Kitty Village, and were people who really got off on doing those things. So I did my thing. That was like the light touch, And the other thing I did, I just kind of walked around with my little healing bag with me. So if someone needed a little something, or, and I had I had these great um, uh, big hammocks that they fit in. They're made out of a space age material that's super light, and when you crunch it all up, you can get a gigantic hammock into something like this. So I would have 2 of them that I could put a lot of people into. And hammocks really, the swinging kind of thing really does a great thing for people. So anyway, so I would, after I spent 4 years of being involved in the facilitating of those gatherings, I said, okay, enough of that. Not going to do that anymore. But I had so many friends there that, and the only time I could ever see these people was at a rainbow gathering, right? So, I mean, Carrick was my buddy. We both grew up in New York. So, we knew each other all through that New York scene. But then he moved out to New Mexico. And, the only time I can see him is go to a rainbow gathering. Anyway, so, and a lot of these people, I go out of my way to go see them, but they not too often come see me. So Um, at the last real gathering I went to that I was like part of, getting there, being somewhat involved in the scouting and someone involved in seed camp, but not being a facilitator, just being there to hang with folks and throw in my 2 cents. Anyway, or interact. I remember being at the gathering in North Carolina that we did at Joyce Kilner, and oh, those guys screwed it up so bad, and I hated to be the guy. See, I told you so, but I would never say that. I would just so that gathering was so screwed up that everyone was pissed at the Rainbow Gathering. The feds were out to get us, health department was out to get us, the federal court was out to get us. Everybody was out, and we deserved being got because we did a terrible job. We virtually because we put the trench, where you shit, we put above where the drinking water. So our shit was going into our drinking water. And when I showed up and said, like, who set this up? This is like, you got to be, and everything they did, where they put parking and how they put parking down, like when I got there, it was dry, it wasn't raining, but it was, Joyce Kilder's a rainforest. And so they put all the cars down where if it rained really hard, they would be underwater. So, I mean, just the most, and that's where they had, the depot where we kept all our food and supplies, and it got washed away. It was just everything wrong could go wrong. And we had a court injunction. There were about 20,000 people there, and they were going to bring in the National Guard and basically pick everyone up and throw them in jail because these people are going to kill themselves. So to save them, we're going to have to shoot them. So we were those high hippie holies came over. Can you please talk to these people? And I remember, so I gathered a few of the really solid Swami mommies, and we they had a basic Supreme Court, state Supreme Court judge there, and the head of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and the head of North Carolina DEA, and they had the feds and the FBI and the Forest Service there. It's this like clot of legal people to decide whether these we need to bring in the National Guard and arrest everyone and get them out of here, or kind of help them and just let them get out of here in a couple of weeks on their own power. So I was walking around with it, and obviously the guy who was going to decide was the Supreme Court judge. So basically, I just made sure that these two really amazing women were on either side of him, and I was next to him, just listening to him, right? Just listening, not talking, not trying to convince him, just listening to him, right? And then asking him, so what do you think of this? What do you think of that? What do you think of this? How would you do this? And he did, we walked around for the whole day. What was truly amazing was everyone was covered in slop and mud. And he was in a suit. And the guy who had like 4 stars on him, who was head of the, highway patrol, they were together. They were buddies, and they both had amazing. The highway patrol shoe had these patent leather shoes that you could see yourself from space on them, and we're all covered in mud and slop and totally wetter than a rat. And these guys were trying, and they don't have umbrellas or anything. I said, how come you got what's a special, umbrella? What's going on? Anyway, we listened enough and got their appreciation and respect, and they basically said, okay, if you do this, this, and this, we won't bring the National Guard in, right? Clean that up, do this. Here's the health department guy. You get somebody, a crew of your people to do what he wants, right? Here's the medical guy, right? Here's the DEA guy, right? If you clean this, so we got a big long list, right? And I said, I'll take care of this, right? And the girl said, we'll represent your wishes here at the gathering, and we'll get it together because it hadn't started yet. It was still, you know, June 20th or something, and so we did all that for him, and the sun came out and dried the place out, and we didn't get the plague, no big, that was a big thing they were worrying about, dysentery, and 20,000 people with dysentery, and so they were, so we got out of there by the kid, but I kept, I did four that ran like sweeter than sweet, and then it just kept doing, pinheads, the rainbow, just, it was unbelievable, just. So if you read that story in XRATTED, that's it's called the first cut. Each novel is a cut, so that's the first cut. That gives you a really good picture of what a rainbow gathering is, and who the people are, and how it runs, and what it is. And so, and the last one I kind of really gave up on, right, was in West Virginia. And what happened there was, so it wasn't too far from where I was, about 100 miles from where I was. So I drove in, and I had been talking to people who had visited it, and they were giving me reports. And so I said, okay. So I, got my camping gear, and I got there, June, I don't know, before the 20th, 10 or 15 days before the gathering really starts, which is about, you know, July 1st. People start cruising in, the 27th of June, but it really kicks off around the 1st of July, and then the hiatus, the 4th of July, and by about 7th July, half the people are gone, and then by, July 15th, it's just the cleanup crew. So anyway, I was there, 10 days before the kickoff. And I walked around, I came in, and it was still, it was what would be called a drive-in gathering. The gatherings I first started, you used to hike everything in, pack everything in, right? Because the more, cops don't come where they can't drive. So if you put it, you hike yourself into the forest, they're not going to, they can't drive in there. The only way they can get in there is by horse, and there aren't too many. There are Forest Service guys with horses, but not too many cops with horses. So anyway, this one you could drive straight in, and it was like a parking lot. It was like big open space. There was a big road. And it was right on a big road, like right on a county road, which is like I never saw a gathering like that. Right on a big, pretty, trucks, things were driving by, and there's the gathering, right? All these people, and big flat, just a plain rather than a meadow, right? And then it kind of cut down because it's West Virginia. There's a lot of water, so it kind of, kind of hill went down to this river down there, right? And it was a big site. A lot of, we walked and walked and walked, but it was a drive-in site. So I got there before they closed in the drive-in part. And so I drove into where Com was going to be because I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to give them. And, everybody kind of knew me. They said, I got stuff for Com. Oh, you can drive in. So I drove in. And left my car there, and then I hiked all around, and I found where I was going to put my healing, temple, which is usually outside of where people can, over there. I'm not like right in plain sight. But then I would have my little downtown site near Com, but not in Com, because Com is not Com. And I was like the only kind of shrink of there. I was like the counselor. I mean, I was an EMT. I could deal with, almost anything in the body screwed up. So, but I didn't want to be in the middle because, there were a lot of great people in Com, a lot of great herbalists, a lot of great acupuncturists and a lot of great doctors and EMTs and nurses, but there are people there who will try and heal a compound fracture with a crystal. It's like, or you see some come in with a really communicable disease like typhoid or scurvy or something like that. And the thing you do is you grab that person with a pair of gloves, you walk them out of the sight, you take them, because off the site there's always a cop, on the side of the road just waiting, and you say up, and you get to know all the cops, and you say, hey, Bob, this guy is communicable. Let us put him in a plastic bag and take him to the hospital, right? And I'd give the policeman a pair of gloves and a mask, and I did that a number of times. But there'd be people in calm who would say, "Oh, you can't do that. No, we're taking their rights away to be here and free," and get everyone sick. It's like, no, sorry. So that's be, I'd have my little sub, a satellite healing temple near calm, but not in calm. So that was how. And then I'd walk around. I'd go into calm. I'd get a bunch of band-aids and some salves and some, alcohol and some, other things, and put in my little med bag. And I'd be the guy walking around. I'd have a walkie-talkie. I'd be the eyes and ears of Shantasina and calm. And, because everyone knew me and everyone trusted me. And I was never an authoritarian kind of guy. So, because Shantasina is the rainbow police, right? They're worse than cops. They're judgmental. And anyway, but they're nice guys too. I mean, I sat around fires with all these folks and had a good time, told stories. So, anyway, so I drive in, I drop my stuff off at calm. I keep my car there. I walk around the site, see what it's all, where they're putting this and putting that. And so I find myself where I'm going to put my healing temple out of, sight and, out of sound, so I can go to sleep there. Or, if I want to have a private moment, I can. But I'll also have my little downtown satellite healing temple near Calm. I usually set it between Calm and Kitty Village. Those are two groups that would need my help. And then I would spend, mornings. I would, get up with the sun, do my meditations, do my exercises, then, put my little healing bag together and then take a walk. And I would I'd have a few kitchens, right? And I'd go into the kitchens and see how they're doing, see if they needed any help. Somebody get them water, somebody get them wood, they need something chopped, they need their cleaning station set up, And the best thing you do is you go become the friend of the kitchen, because then you can get fed anytime you want. You don't have to wait on a long line. So, and then you give all the chefs a massage, right? And listen to their problems, help them negotiate whatever little tips they might have in their camp. And so I would do that, between, you know, 9 in the morning, which nobody wakes up at Rainbow Gathering until around 10:30. But the kitchens are, starting to, get ready for breakfast. Because all the kitchens make a breakfast for the people around their camps, right? And but dinner is made by the kitchens, and it's brought to the main meadow and then served out to 20,000 people. That's why everybody has to have their own cup, right? And their own spoon. So, anyway, so that was my usual thing. And then around um, 3, I would have office hours over at my, satellite healing temple. And people knew that. So around, between 1 and 3, people would saunter over there, and I would have hammocks for them to lie on, and chairs, and books to read, and things of that nature. And I would saunter in, and it'd be like the waiting room. There'd be, 2 or 3 or 10 people who needed talking or listening or adjustments. And so if they needed something more, I would walk them back over to Com, which wasn't too far away, and find a good practitioner that could take it from there. Or I would go into the back room and find the tincture that that person might need. Anyway, so that's kind of how I would roll. So I wouldn't take authority. I wouldn't be a facilitator. I would just be a presence, right? And and at night I would go visit Nick at night, all the shows, and hang and have a good time and dance and play the drums. And then once things got quiet, there were always 5 or 6 different campfires that I had good friends at, and we would share smoke and little treats and have a good time. And then I would stroll to bed, and that's why I would have a downtown uh, healing temple, because my sacred healing temple was way out there. So it might take a good 40 minutes to walk there in the dark. And it wasn't like off the beaten path. It was, out there, right? So sometimes I may not want to walk that far. So I would go into my little satellite camp and go to sleep there. Usually, when the gathering got started, I would mostly be in my satellite camp, you know. So anyway, so this is the West Virginia gap, right? So you get the picture, right? So um, and it was like I was there 10 days before the crowd showed up, but it was going to be a pretty crowded show because it was right off a main road. It was well advertised, easy to get to, and so anyway, I'm in my and it's not quite. It's still June, and so there's a lot of people there, but it's not the crowd, right? And so I'm in my hammock in my satellite healing temple, and this girl comes running up. Al, you have to come! You have to come! I said, wait, I don't have to do anything. I'm very coming. No, it's an emergency. I really don't. If go to Com, they're the emergency. No, only you. I said, no. And then she goes, no, you don't understand. It's not. You need to come. And I know this person. And when she got out of being, oh, you got it, to no, you got to come. I said, okay, let's go. I get my cane, get my bag, let's go. Got my hat, got my umbrella because it was really sunny. And what had occurred was this rich guy had driven into the site because it was a drive-in site. I mean, there's a road there, right? Yes, the A camp, and this is the other thing. So isn't supposed to be alcohol on site because there's every other kind of drug. So they kept like at just where the parking lot is, you know, and it's really it's like putting the black people on the wrong side of the tracks. And the other thing about the Rainbow Gathering, it's not a rainbow because it's percent white people. Now it's very class, there's really rich people, really poor people, really road dogs, but it's pretty much all white, right? It's a white thing. And I don't know what it's like now, but I mean, the last gathering I went to was, you know, 2014. That was the last gathering. So, but this is West Virginia. It was like 2000, and, I don't know, 6 or 8, somewhere between 6 and 10. Not quite sure. Anyway, so I, my legs aren't that good, so I'm not running, but I'm walking as fast as I can. Come on, So we get there, and what it was is this guy drove past alcoholic guys. He just kind of didn't, the guys kind of jumped in front of him. Hey, you got to stop, man. Can't drive in. He just kept driving, and the alcoholic guy had to like jump out of the way, or he'd have been run over. And so this guy's in the, Land Rover, you know, $40,000 car, right? And he's not a rainbow guy. He's just come to drive through and look at the monkeys in the zoo. And so he's got two flashy sorority girls in the back, and he's in the front with a buddy of his. And they driving in, and they're looking for pot. That's the other thing. Hey, anybody got pot? And he's driving in there, and the alcoholic guy who we almost ran over, you know, runs up to the car and knocks on the window, and the guy rolls it down halfway. He goes, "Hey man, you got me." He starts giving him a hard time, and the guy rolls um, the uh, the window up. So the alcoholic guy, his adrenaline's going, and he runs up and he grabs kind of a big rock, right? And he runs up the car and throws the big rock. When he runs, he's got a big rock like this. He runs up the car and he throws it in the window that the rich guy has rolled up, and it explodes. And glass goes all over the place, and the drunk guy grabs a big shard of glass and goes to stab the rich guy, and they're fighting over it. And the rich guy slashes the drunk guy, so the blood of the drunk guy is going everywhere, and then the blood, the drunk guy cuts the carotid of the rich guy's neck, and the guy, the alcoholic guy, was bleeding really bad, but not like a carotid artery. And that shot all over the car like a fire hose of blood. And it drenched the guy turned his neck, and it 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 drenched the girls in the back seat with blood. They would just had blood in there. They had blood all over them. And then he ran his car, he lost consciousness and ran the car into a tree or a rock or something, but it stopped. And basically, when I got there, the helicopters were taking off, and the drunk guy and the guy with a cut neck, and the other guy who got cut up too, uh, they were helicoptered out. But the girls were still in the back seat, and nobody wanted to touch them, AIDS and all that. And I had my little blue gloves, and so I said, "Anybody got some T-shirts, towels, blankets, anything?" And people ran off and came right back. And so, how about water? Anybody got water? So, um, I kind of leaned in there, and this girl who was with me, who was a nurse, she had blue gloves too, and so we kind of took the T-shirts and rubbed, got as much blood off them as we could, and then we got them out of the car, and we kind of had bottles of water and just kind of poured it over the girls, and took the blankets, and again took as much blood as we could. And I said, garbage bag. And we put the T-shirts and bloody blankets into a garbage bag. I said, somebody take care of that. And the girls were relatively cleaned up, but they were in shock beyond belief, right? So I said, no, we're not taking these girls to con. No, no, no. So um, we take them to my, satellite thing, and I put them on hammocks, and I swaddle them. I have more blankets, and I really cover them all because we're starting to go into shock, shiver, right? So I went over to, well, I didn't. I stayed with the girls. The nurse went over and got, something like a Xanax and gave it to the girls. And, we kind of got them to the point where they were not in shock. But we then got a police guy I knew to get a ambulance, and they brought an ambulance in to where my little, and I set my thing up so a vehicle like that, like my truck, was parked there. So the ambulance got there, and they took the girls off to the hospital and got their parents, and and the nurse, my friend, she went with them, you know, and I went and got in the river and soaked for the rest of the day. Right, so that was like the biggest cluster frac I seen in a long time. Everyone did. The only person who did anything correct was my nurse friend who came and got me, right? And she did most of everything. I just basically calmed her down so she could go into the right protocol, and that she had somebody who she could trust her back to was me. There was nobody else there that she was there. She knew, right? So she came and got me, right? So, and I just went through, the checklist of the things we needed to do, and she pretty much did them, right? So, so that I was like a little irritated about that, and I went to counsel, and I said, what are you guys?" And everyone knew me, so when I would go off on stuff like I do these chats, they were like, yeah. So, and other people, he's right, we have to, but do they do anything? No, because they're in denial, right? And they're also, what is it, cognitive dissonance. That's the two things that a rainbow gathering is. So that is, going on. And so, that was like about 5 days or 4 days before the first, right? So I, spent a long time in the river soaking, and then I dried myself up, and I went up to my private healing temple away from anybody. And I meditated and you know just ate tofu and a few vegetables, and nothing heavy, and tried to, which I'm planning to do, um, more of, what do they call it, when you don't eat anything. You know, Ramadan is coming up. That's usually a season. The other Wednesday was Ash, between Ash Wednesday and fast, and Ramadan I fast. So anyway, that's what I did there. And so, a day or so later, I felt better, and the weather was nicer, and things seemed to be calmer. And again, morning came, and I walked down, and I walked through the camp, and everybody was asleep. And I went to the different kitchens and talked to different people, and how's things going? Da da da. Where you? After that cluster frack, I had to. Yeah, I heard about that. And always, I heard you save that guy's life. I said, no, no, no. All I did was put a towel around his neck. It's not like, you know. Anyway, I didn't really deal with that guy. I just dealt with the girls. And anyway, so because everything in the Rainbow Gathering is a rumor mill, and I have a great story about that. But when the Vermont gathering, so the that morning, I'm walking around, and I go to one of my kitchens, and I get my cup of coffee. There was a great coffee kitchen. And he had cappuccinos and French twists, and oh, it was really yummy. So I, got myself a few pastries and, thermos of coffee, and went on my way to see. So I'm walking down the main drag that kind of goes down to the river, and there is a number of kitchens, and there is what is known as the trading circle. And used to not be a big deal, but now, this one, it's like everyone's going to the trading circle, like to trade for bud and get some really great swag. And it's like materialism is materialism, right? It's that, trading circle could have been Walmart's for all it was worth. But anyway, so, because back in the day, the trading circle was great because people would make kind of things in the woods and trade it for other things that other people made, and people would be, sitting around the fires in the trading circle during the day and playing music and telling stories and playing card games and stuff like that. No, but people were serious about this trading circle. So anyway, I'm walking in that direction, and there are a lot of people on the mid track. There's at least, I'm walking by. It's like walking in a city. There's like, hundreds of people on this main drag, going here, going there, and I walk by, and I see this guy about, I don't know, 50 yards in front of me, and he's sitting cross-legged by the side they drag, and he's on the ground, and everyone's above him, walking quickly to go wherever they're going. And I slow down, and what does he have in his lap? But he has a 9 millimeter in his lap, and he has a box of shells, and he's got 4 clips, right? And he's got 4 clips leaning, in his lap with the thing, and he's putting bullets in the clips, right? So I slow down, and not only do I have a thermos of really good coffee, but I also have a thermos of tea, chamomile, hyssop, peppermint, and tea tree, and licorice. And so I kind of sit down, not real close to him, like maybe 3 yards away, and sitting there. And I get out my coffee, and I pour myself a little cup of coffee and start eating a little one of these pastry things. And the coffee is hot, and the smell is really strong. And he kind of looks up from his putting bullets into clip for an automatic pistol. He looks over at he sees me eating, um, you know, a nice little pastry and drinking a coffee, and you know, I look by his body language, like his nose is flaring. He's looking at my food, and his stomach is grumbling. And I look up at him and I go, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Would you like a coffee and a Danish?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm really hungry." So I get out another cup because my thermos is really a Kruby thermos. I just found it the other day in a pile of my stuff, and it's like a 6 cup coffee thermos talk like that, and it's got these plastic cups that screw on top of the thermos, and then the next one screws on top of that cup. So you got about 4 cups, so you can give coffee to 4 people, and each one gets at least a cup and a half, right? So I go, fine. So I kind of squish over towards him, not really close, and now about a yard between them, but close enough to hand him stuff. So I pour him a cup of coffee, give him a coffee, and I pull out my little napkin with these Danish on it. So which one you want? Oh, I'll take that one. Oh, good choice. So he's eating it, and he really just that, and then he kind of slowly drinks his coffee because it's pretty hot. And he goes, "Wow, this is hot coffee." I said, "Yeah, I just got it from the kitchen." He goes, "Kitchen? There are kitchens here?" I said, "Yeah." "Haven't you been to a rainbow gathering?" He goes, "No, it's my first one." I go, "Oh." And I can see that he has been crying because it's kind of dusty, and so he's got dust on his face, and the tears are right. You can see them. So I said, "So this is your first gathering, huh? What brought you here?" He goes, "Wow," and he snaps like that. He goes, "I'm looking for rainbows," and I go, "Well, what do you think's a rainbow?" And he goes, "Really terrible people, really scummy people that should die." I go, "Really? Hmm. So why do you feel that?" I didn't say, "Hey, I'm a rainbow. That's a rainbow. Here's a rainbow. They're all rainbows." I didn't say that. I said, "Why is that?" And so he tells me a story that he was, you know, this kid's about, I don't know, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, not 20 yet, and he's older than 16. But anyway, so he goes, "Well, I'm just starting to discover who I am," meaning it's like the secret handshake to say, "I've just realized I'm kind of gay." Right? But he doesn't use that word or say anything. Just I'm starting to discover who I am. Okay, well, that's good. It's good to know who you are, right? So we're talking, and I said, "So where are you from?" And he says, "I'm from Ohio." I said, "So when's the last time you were home?" He goes, "About 5 months." And I said, "So what you got a job? You've been working? What you been doing?" And he goes, no, no, I kind of got thrown out of the house. I said, why did you get thrown out of the house? What could you do to get thrown out? And then he says, well, I had a boyfriend in my room, and my parents are Baptists, and they were like, they just threw me out of the house. And I said, oh, okay. So you're discovering who you are, and you're discovering that you're not you're, you're homosexual, right? As well, am I all? I don't know if I'm homosexual. So, well, you like boys, Because, well, I'm attracted to them more than girls. Did you ever have a girlfriend? He goes, no, no, I somehow don't like girls. I said, okay. And I said, why is that? Oh, it's because, I haven't really had a father. And my mother is so overbearing, and I have two sisters who are worse than she is, and they constantly pick on me. And, you know, they're all so holier than thou with their churchies. So he's going, okay, okay. And I said, so what did you do in those 5 months? He said, well, I really never had a job, and I tried to get a job in food services because I met a young guy, and he said I could stay at his house, and I did, and I he got me a job at the place, and I didn't do too well, and basically I got fired, and I made a scene, and so they fired my friend, and then he broke up with me, and I said, okay, yeah, okay. So then what did he say? Well, I had a little money, and so I went to the next town over, and I met some people who, they were panhandling, and they were living in an abandoned building, and they said that they were rainbows. And I said, oh, so I panhandled, and I did pretty good, and then they showed me that I could make even more money turning tricks, and so we went to another city. We went from a town to a city, and I knew a place where you could pick up Johns, and I started doing that, and I was making a lot of money, and I was going to get an apartment, and I had bought some nice clothes, and um, so we were living in this abandoned house, and they were all talking about coming to this rainbow gathering here because it was so, all the rainbows were going to be here, and it's be, great, and so, you know, I went to sleep, and when I woke up, they were gone, and they had taken my money and all my stuff. So I got very upset, and I decided I was going to kill them. I was going to get a gun and find them. I was going to kill them and all the other rainbows because rainbows are terrible people. And I said, well, can I look at your gun? And he had it in his lap. He goes, I don't have a gun. I said, what's that in your lap? Oh, that's a gun. I just bought that. And I go, did you ever shoot a gun? Do you know what a gun is for? He said, yes, I'm going to kill rainbows. And I said, well, let me take a look at this. I said, I know a little bit about guns. So I pick up his gun. I pop the clip out of his gun. It drops out the bottom. And then I take the gun apart. And I put the barrel and the firing pin and the spring in my pocket. And I give him the rest of his gun in pieces. And I said, you don't need a gun. What you need is a really good meal. And I said, so come with me. You know. And so I take him to one of my kitchens, right? And I know the guy. The guy's name is Red. He's he's gay, and he's from Atlanta, and he's a great guy. He works in a church for homeless people. He's a shrink, and he does the rainbow gathering to still be in that community, but instead of being a shrink, he's just a cook. He runs a kitchen, and he has a great kitchen, vegetarian kitchen. But he loves eggs, So he's vegetarian chicken with cheese and eggs, and he makes the best pancakes. No meat, basically no meat. He has everything else but no meat. So, um, I bring him over to Red. I say, hey, Red, this kid needs a good meal. So and he's got tables and tablecloths, and not just even off the floor. And he sits the kid down, and gives him a nice cup of coffee, and then he makes him an omelet and potatoes and a whole bunch of other stuff. and and the kid goes, so what do I owe you, man? And he goes, no, you don't understand. You don't owe me anything. It's my pleasure to do this, but I could use a hand. And he goes, a hand at what? And he goes, well, what do you need a hand at, Red? And he goes, well, water, wood, and I got a big thing of onions I want to cut up for dinner tonight, and I have this and I have that, and I said, well, so I said to the kid, so let's go get the, Red, you got the wagon and your jugs? Yep. So we take the wagon, we take the jugs, we take it over to where the spring is. I show the kid where the spring is. I show him where the slid trench is, and these are pretty big things. So we're filling that up, and we kind of go where the spring is. The water kind of goes down to where the river is, and so we kind of soak our feet. And I show him a number of acupressure points in his hands and along his arms and his neck. I said, yeah, just press this on yourself. What do you feel? He goes, oh, wow. And so by the time I show him all these things and he's washed himself off in the stream, the big jugs are kind of overflowing. We turn the spout off at the spring, and we roll the thing back, and then we take the cart and we go get some wood. I show him where to find wood and how to get wood. And then, Red only has one fire, but he wants to bake some stuff. So he has a, 55-gallon drum oven. And so I show the kid how to make, fire, right? And then we start cutting up onions, right? And he's really, really, really getting into it. And he's like running around getting this and that Red needs. And he's skipping through the meadows. So he gets back from one of these little journeys, and I'm just sitting talking to Red. And I say, Red, when the kid's running around getting stuff, this kid, I give Red the gun and say, he was going to shoot as many people. He had been trashed by some street trash, and they call themselves rainbows, and they had ripped him off, and so he was going to come here and kill everyone. I found him sitting on the main path with this gun, loading clips, and crying, right? And then he told me a story. I'm telling you a story. Here's his gun, and here's the bullets, and I'm going to keep the spring, and so this gun, you keep the rest of the gun parts, and I'll keep the spring. So it can't work. Anyway, so he goes, okay. And I said, he needs a place to stay. Can he stay at your kitchen? Oh, yeah, he's a good worker. He's running around doing all this great stuff. Yeah, yeah. I'll show him the path. I said, yeah. And I said, he's gay. And so it would be good for you to ease him into that and tell him what it's about, give him the 411, and, you're a shrink. You assess him, and we'll figure out the best we can do for him. And he says, great idea. So he, while Red and I are talking, this kid has been running around, and so he shows back up after collecting all the stuff that Red had sent him off to get from supply and from here and that, and the kid was so jazzed up that like an hour and a half ago he was about to kill 30 people. And then here he is being fed, given a place to stay, and given responsibility. You know, because once I showed him where the how to get firewood, where to get water, where supply was, and introduced him to supply people, he was doing all of that for Red, right? And how to start a fire. He started a fire, two cooking firekeeper was. I kind of showed him that, and he was going through his own head of, oh, look at this, and I wasn't like, oh, no, you're not doing it right. I just got to show him how to do it and said, here, you start these other fires. So he was getting off. His mother and sisters and everybody in his life up to this point never, gave him any responsibility, never gave him any authority, never gave him any self-worth, right? And that's why he was going to go kill people. So he totally forgot about that and was totally jazzed on this. And he's like running here and there through the meadow. He's like skipping. And I said to Red, this kid needs a rainbow name. And he goes to me, so what do you think his name should be? And I said, well, I don't know. Look how he's skipping through the meadow. And Red goes, yeah, that's his name, Meadow. So kid comes back with wagon of firewood and stuff he got at supply and he goes, what do I do now? I said, well, Red will have stuff. I have to go on. But we've decided to give you a rainbow name so you can truly be a rainbow and understand what a rainbow was, because those people that ripped you off, they were not rainbows, right? And Red has a place for you to stay here. He's got a tent and he's got some clothes and, he'll take care of you. And so he goes, so what's my name? What's my name? I want a new name. I want to be a new person. I want a new beginning. What's my name? And Red says, your name is Meadow. And this kid jumps up and goes over to Red and just gives him the biggest loving hug, and Red returns it, and I join in. I'm a big fan of group hugs, and the three of us are hugging, and the kid is like, just now he's crying again, but he goes, these are the first tears I've ever cried of joy. I feel so great. And I said, Meadow, that's how it should be. That's what real rainbow is about. And so I said, I gotta go, but I'll be back. This is one of my morning spots. So I went off and did other things. And I came back and the next morning, and Red was really pissed because he got to be close with this kid, and he heard, I just did the thumbnail, reader, advisor, healer thing to quench the fire of the moment so it doesn't explode. But Red really, took his healing self and his saintly self and his loving self and got to know Meadow really well and listen to what happened to this kid. And, Red has been part of the Rainbow Gathering for years, and I've known him for years. And so we've talked about how the Rainbow Gathering doesn't, it's like America, it's not living up to its advertised potential. So he was really pissed. And so he said, we're going to council. Council was like at noon, right? Every day at noon, people would come and, tell the council, hey, this is wrong. We need to fix that or do this or complain about that or vent or, it's a place to go. So I said, okay, I'll come with you. And so Red was really the person who, I just went with him, right? And so we go, and Red had said, listen, there's this thing called the council, and you can speak there and speak your truth about everything about your life. And if you're holding the feather, people can't shut you up or tell you to be quiet or sit down. As long as you have that feather and you're respectful, you can speak as long as you want and tell your story. And Al and I are going to go with you and be supportive, and we'll throw in our 2 cents, right? So we go there, and Red, you know, says, because everyone knows Red, he runs one of the better kitchens. He's also a fellow, he's the only other guy who's kind of a shrink. He does kind of the same thing I do, but he does more because he runs a kitchen. Me, I just kind of saunter around and talk to people, and rub their backs every now and then, or listen to them intently, or get them something to eat, or you know jump in when no one else seems to going to be jumping in, and do what has to be done. So anyway, I don't say anything. Red really is like lays it all out what it is, and then says, "This is Meadow," and he's going to tell you how he feels, right? So Meadow goes on about how he was going to kill as many people as he could. Yeah, he did not mince words. And he goes, and Red has my gun and my bullets, and I don't want to ever have those guns and bullets again. And and Al, he's the one who interceded. He's the one who saw me. He sat down and shared his croissant and coffee with me, and then took me over to Red's. And that's really what the rainbow is. And I love this, and I love serving, and I love cutting wood and starting cooking fires, and getting water, and cutting vegetables, and cooking, and talking to people and listening to their stories. But I see that more than half the people don't do any of that. They're just so you know centered, and they're all about themselves, and so Meadow gives this amazing speech that I'm almost about to cry over. That if the rainbow, everyone talks about Babylon, and how everything's so bad, but he goes, Babylon's right here. I was Babylon. I was about to kill as many people as I could. And no one except Al saw that. And hundreds of people walked by me, and I just got more and more wanting to. If I had known anything how to, I'd never loaded bullets. It took me 10, 15 minutes to figure out about a clip, what that was. And I put if I knew anything about guns, there would have been 40 people dead. And it was only Providence that Al stumbled, walked across me and looked and saw me, and quietly approached me, and now that I see what he did, really amazingly, he didn't just jump in. He sat next to me, and prayed, and made sure I could smell my coffee, and I'm hungry. He saw that I was hungry. He gave me a croissant, started talking to me, took my gun away from me, and took me over to Red. Right, and those two men spent most of that day showing me what it was to be a rainbow. And he gave an amazing speech, right? And maybe 10% of that um, council had a tear in the eye, and the others were like looking at their watch. Well, we had to get to more important things, and that is kind of the problem. And that is the craziness that I see that's going on right now in our government, is that everyone, the people who were up on that dais in the Democratic, debate, well, they were screaming at each other, talking over each other. It was like pathetic. And there's Karen Pinhead going on. Oh, it's not so bad. But this virus is a lot more than what people think it is, and they've known something like this could occur. He says, "Oh, we got the best people. We're really well prepared." Well, we're not. We don't have enough test kits. This one community pattern popped out in California, where this person was not in China, did not know anyone who came from China. Because she wasn't that, the CDC wouldn't give a test kit to see if it was coronavirus. And so for 4 days, she was in that hospital getting sicker and sicker, exposing all the people in that hospital that virus. So that is probably that's the one thing they're freaked out that they're not really saying that she probably um, infected 20 people herself, and then those 20 people will infect in the next week another 20 people, and those people will infect another 20 people, and by next week this time, there will be a little node of 600 people infected in that neighborhood of California, and in that week, about 1,000 people will have walked next to those 600 people who, at whatever restaurant or supermarket or just being on a bus, so within uh, the next week, this time, about 2,000 people will we have been infected by that one sick person, and no one has an idea where she got it from, right? But she was allowed to infect everyone because CDC, oh, she wasn't in China. Well, we're not going to send you a test kit. Well, man, every freaking hospital should have 500 of those test kits, but they don't, right? And they're not funding any. That's not on the top of their list, right? So it's already too late in the United States, And if you leave, what's his name, Pencil Boy, Mickey Pencil, that guy when he was governor of whatever state he was governor of, and he cut the budget of all his healthcare organizations. And so he made it really a good, healthcare there in that state. Well, one of the things he didn't do was he was so, you know, homophobic that uh, the AIDS epidemic, so most of the people who had AIDS in his state were not gay. They were intravenous drug users. So he refused to do a needle trade, right? So thousands of people were infected with AIDS because of his prejudice in the years that he was governor. And so that's what we're looking at. And that goes right back to that kid, Meadow, sitting on the side of the main drag, and no one noticed him. But he was filling, clips of an automatic gun with bullets. And he was going to kill as many rainbows as he could. And our present, um, basic establishment, and I'm not even talking about the hidden hand or the powers that should be, just the present, usual suspects of the pinhead sock puppets that run the counties and cities and states, you know, without the kind of compassion and love of love's co-creation. Ooh, baby, this is going to be one heck of a roller coaster ride, you know. And the fact that it seems to be artificially manifested to be a bioweapon, and Mr. Hyde, you know, uh, the guy I was telling you about, who's got it really. He had been in the military. He had a copy of the military biological warfare handbook, and he put it up on his site. I was reading through it. So he was very clear about what the dynamics of biological warfare is, and this actually looked like that. Now, China seems to have gotten somewhat of a handle on this, but they let the horse out of the barn, right? And it took, they are an authoritarian nation, right? So they could tell 20 million people to stay in their house, and they could, dump a truckload of dirt in front of all the doors of, a 400 apartment building to keep everyone in their place. They could just go around and take everyone off the street. I don't see that happening in the United States. You know, just don't see that because Pinhead carrot boy will tell the people that it's a hoax and it's, you know, don't believe the fake news, CNN is lying to you. It's like, really? Okay. And you look at the stock market and he's blaming the stock market went down because everyone's freaked out about who's running for president and the Democrats. I don't think that's why the stock market collapsed. Stock market collapsed on its own weight of that our economy is forget about it. It's like a house of cards, right? And all it needed was this little excuse of China's, your economy's going to collapse. So it's whereas if we had faith and trust in our neighbors to work together, this wouldn't be a problem. So that's what this show is about. It's about visualizing an alternative aesthetic, right? Go in a direction of love's co-creation, right? And it's not to be a tribe. The Rainbow Gathering is a good example of what not to do, you know. And the only time the Rainbow Gathering kind of works is when everyone works together. And that's when it's loads of fun. But I stopped going because I got less and less and less and more and more and more about the exceptionalism of the individual. I'm cooler than you are, right? And there's a thing so you come into the Rainbow Gathering and there's this place called Welcome Home. And I just love that whole feeling. Whoever comes through that gate, everyone says, welcome home, right? Well, when I did Ithaca, so I had, time on my hands and assets. And so when we laid the place out, and we had the parking over, the road came in, and there's the parking there, right? And the bus village over there. And there was the Bliss Botany camp. So if you had nothing, no camping gear, no nothing, didn't know what to do, you went into, and there was showers there, and there was big boxes full of clothes and shoes and camping gear and, plates and cups and spoons. And then we made this big open gate, of this was these two um, witch hazel bushes, and they were really high. And we brought Welcome Home right between the two of them, and we found some fresh, not fresh, but wild rose bushes, and kind of plant them there. And we planted a whole bunch of kind of thorny, flowering plants, and then wove them together over uh, the going into the site, and put a sign, and then put roses and things coming out of them, uh, saying "Welcome home." Right? It was like an unbelievable sight, and I graded the Welcome Home Road into the site all the way up through all the different kitchens and camps and into the big main meadow, and took all the stones and twigs and everything out and planted sod. The guy said, we got some extra sod that's just been hanging out, and it's like been in the back 40 of the warehouse for a couple of years, and it's still it's funky, but and so I can bring a couple of bags of peat moss and bags of fertilizer and bags of grass seed, and we can put that sod and all of that all the way up to your big meadow, and then it'll take soon as it gets a little bit warm, and you got enough water to water it, and you mow it. We'll get you a mower, and so for a good month, I let it grow up, and then I mowed it, and then it grew up, and I mowed it, and by the time the crowd showed up, it was a very hardy, well, it was like a golf course, right? It was like unbelievable, right? So you walk through this flowered atrium, arbor, open gate kind of thing. It said "Welcome home," and there was info right there where you could get every information where how the camp was laid out, where what was what, and we had mimeographed things of how what you needed to do and how to poop in a slit trench and all the above, right? And and that's the best. And it wasn't me, meaning I just kind of set the ball rolling and got people together, and they all did it themselves, right? I didn't, go do it all and make, oh, it's got to be this way. No, it was amazingly beautiful because it was the collective love's co-creation. All our relations did it, right? And so that's what's going. So we're our window of opportunity is that we're being forced to the level of incompetence and selfishness and stupidity of our present status of the human race, where we are going to wipe ourselves out. I mean, Chris Hitchens, if you read his books, he's pretty much okay. Things are lost. It's all, but we're still here. That's I felt the way Chris Hitchens. Go read his books, and he's got in the last 5 years he's wrote about six that are really right on top of it. Just like the guy who wrote the black young man who wrote The World Against Me. That's another really good book. Of like, oops, things are tough, but maybe we can get through this. So, but Chris has given up. He's gone past hope into cynicism, past that, and he's into grief. You know, it's really hard. If you lose something, yes, you should have grief, but I've lost a lot in my life. I've died 6 times, and I've had a lot of close friends die, and I've seen a lot of really, amazingly bad situations. But because of my 3 rules and my basic attitude of I don't give up, I don't give in, you know, I am never mean. I can be a moron, I can be a jerk, but I'm never mean, you know. And a lot of people, their first reaction after they feel fear or scared or belittled, the first thing they do is be mean, you know. And a good portion of the population do that. Carrot Pinhead, that's pretty much his thing. He's not a bad guy. I can see inside him that there's some good spots there. But he goes to be mean. So was Obama. He was a mean guy, you know. So was Jimmy Carter. I knew Jimmy Carter. He had a really nasty, mean streak in him, you know. And you name anybody who's well known, right, for being powerful, he's got a mean streak in him. And you don't have to have that, you know. One person I knew, I didn't get to meet Martin Luther King. I wish I had. I heard him speak a number of times, but I never got to meet him. But the person I did meet and knew pretty well was Malcolm X. And he lived through a really hard life. And he came out the other side and was not a mean person. When he became Malcolm X and Reverend, um, you know, you know, and he ran this mosque, he wasn't mean. Now he had harsh words to say about the white devil, but he wasn't mean. He used to pat me on the head and say, "Nice white boy," because that's when I knew him when I was like 5, 6, and 7. And so, because my grandma and I, we used to go listen to him talk in Central Park. He had this ladder that he would stand on, and he had the American flag because you could, without getting a permit and without doing anything, as long as you have, amplification, you could speak on the soapbox, right? And he had such a voice when he would speak in Central Park. He'd have thousands of people there, and they could all hear him. He didn't need a megaphone. He didn't need amplified sound. So, what gives me hope is that we're still here, and that there are a lot of really good people, and humanity is better than it's better than its best angel, and it's better than its worst devil. We just have to keep living up to our better angel, and then no matter what happens, it's not going to be a big deal. And things have been pretty bad. I mean, if you were living in Syria in the last, since 2011, it was like hell on earth, and still is. If you were in the Middle East, that, you know, uh, Mr. Rumsfeld, Mr. George W. Bush, Mr. Dick Cheney, Mr. Armitage, all of that, that circle of neocons, they are directly to be blamed for everything from 9/11 on, because there's enough evidence to show that, I can't say that they caused it or planned it, but they kind of knew this was coming. And if they had just put the resources in line, they could have stopped 9/11, you know? And so that kind of goes to this seeming uh, edge of the pandemic that we're on, that they're saying, oh, there's no trouble here. It's all good. We got it covered. Well, they don't. And that's one reason why the stock market has fallen through the floor. I mean, the main reason is that our economy is a joke, right? There was no, oh, we've got the strongest economy we've ever had. Well, they said that just before 2008. And so we're right on this edge, and I'm glad I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I have nothing. Man, I got nothing to lose. There's nobody around me, But you're not going to get infected tomorrow. I'm thinking about, going back to the valley for a week because, I have to see it would be nice to see my doctor. But instead of depending on my doctors or depending on, the medicines I take now for my diet, for everything I got, if I go to my health purveyor, which is a nonprofit in the valley, my medicines cost me about $30 for 90 days, all the different medicines I have, and the strips for my blood sugar and all that, right? About $30. Now, if I buy it here at CVS, instead of having 90 days worth of stuff, they want $2,800 for 1 month for just 30 days. Whereas if I go in the valley, I can get 90 days worth of my medicines for $30. Right? So, or I can just say, I'm not going to have any money, you know, and so I won't eat the bread. I won't get bread anymore. I won't, I'll just, have vegetables. And that should, and I can get cinnamon and coumarin and a few other herbs that are pretty good for diabetes. And, you know, I can, put my faith in love's co-creation and be more disciplined on my meditation and diet, right? And, say, okay, thanks, medical world, and say, okay, I'm just going to stay in the woods, period, right? And because I have no money, I'll probably run out of electricity, and then I won't be able to do this, right? And I want to have gas for my car, really, so I won't be able to drive into town as much, and go into the restaurant and do a live chat with you guys, you know, and that will be actually fine for me, because we're just on the edge of spring. We might have a few more weeks of cold weather, but as soon as April kind of shines around, it'll be warmish, right? And as soon as end of April, then it'll be nice, and May, June, May to December are really great here, and pretty much um, we will know whether this 19 is a biological weapon or not by the end of March, because what happens is, so it seems like, oh, China, there are less people getting sick in China than there are in the rest of the world. Well, that's an irrelevant um, statement. We don't know that, um, but how a biological weapon is designed is, as all the other viruses that SARS and Middle Eastern, you know, MERS and AIDS, and AIDS kind of lets a biological weapon footprint. Um, and the other one in Africa, Ebola, all of those things went on the pathway of a natural virus, something that you know you can kind of plot and figure out what it's going to do. But this is one of the first things that they stuck, um, you know, the novel heading on, because they have no idea what the practice. They've never seen a thing like this, so it really infects people very easily, right? And then they get sick. Now, 80% of the folks, it's not as bad. It's like kind of a cold, right? It really doesn't kill them, but what it does do, um, it allows them to infect even more people. That's why the infection rate is so high. And so there's 20% of the people get pretty sick, right? And out of that, maybe 4% die, right? But what it seems to be, it's kind of got this bit of AIDS in it. That once you get this virus in you, it's in you for friggin' life. And now it may, there are people I know who had herpes, and it's in them pretty much for life. And a lot of people, they're not stressed. They take good care of themselves. They don't really represent. They don't get herpes sores, right? But it's in them for life, right? And I have a sense that that's what 19 is going to be. It's going to affect the whole human race, right? And it could easily kill maybe 20 to 70% of the human race. And it will, this thing, if it's a biological weapon, will um, be a pandemic for 3 years. And it will, it'll have an infection rate like it has now, and then it'll plateau. And then it'll do another, you know, hockey stick up and then plateau. Another hockey stick until it pretty much infects the whole human race. Right? And you could control it. We still have the possibility of controlling it, but they're surely not on the stick. I mean, they just made a rule that there's this guy Fuji from um, he's that little dog and pony show where they had the news conference with Connie and Mickey and the kids. Um, the one guy who knew really what he was talking about is this doctor guy. The guy who's head of NIH is a buddy, is a donor for, he's not a doctor, he's not a scientist, he's not an administrator, but he's head of the NIH, right? And he was a guy who cut the budget of the CDC for the last 3 years to the point where they don't have anything ready to go. They're just kind of resting on their laurels. And they need to be restocking, rebuilding the infrastructure they had, but they're not, right? And the first thing they did was they passed a rule that none of those guys could talk to the media. Everything has to go through Mike Pence and then go through Donald Trump. Well, good luck with that, you know? Good luck with that. And so, by this administrative thing that they just set up, what you will, because this thing moves so quick, what you're going to see is, unless I really get a handle on it in the next week and a half, you're going to see, I would say, by the end of March, 20% of the American population will be sick, right? And we will be counting the numbers of the Americans sick, uh, maybe 70,000, and maybe 1,500 people will be dead. But hey, compared to flu, that's nothing. This season, which has been a bad flu season, we will probably 60,000 people will die of the flu, and they're not like freaking out about this. But this is going to infect everyone. Once it's inside them, they'll have it forever. Now, and the window of the opportunity of this is whether so if you get infected like me, so I'm really sick, but I don't represent as a really sick guy because I kind of take care of myself. I kind of meditate, and focus on healing my body from the inside out. And yes, I do take the pharmaceuticals because they seemingly, um, when I was really, really sick, kind of helped. And, then I got stuck in these programs where I get these drugs from Big Pharma. And like I said, it cost me $30 for 90 days, so like $10 a month. But if I bought them just from CVS, it would cost me $2,800 a month. And that's, our healthcare system. Yeah, we got the best one in the world, but it costs, average person a lot of money that they can't afford. So I'm like, out here in the woods, and I'm getting myself in a position where I can, ethically, use all of the above at my access. But if things get to the point where they're what they did in China, just take people off the street, I'm just staying in the woods, and I'm self, you know, um, quarantining it myself. I don't need to be taken to a camp because I'm already out there in the woods. Um, so that's what we're looking at, and this is a great opportunity because the only way we can get over both the economic issue and the biologic issue is with love's co-creation, right? And the political issue. These are all things that will force we as human beings to be compassionate, loving, um, sacrificing, and thinking about the other as our brother and sister. So with that, no one has commented anything about this, and there've been, we almost had 6 people there. So what time is it now? Almost 12. So I'm gonna. So in the next week or two, I'll still be able to do this. So I will. Once it gets warm enough, where and my friends who I've been taking care of, oh, they're healthy. They don't need me. I mean, they kind of do because they really haven't had anyone to talk to vent, to listen, to give a little, solid common sense advice. So, and I tell they still let me hang out instead of you know, because I'm kind of, if you live with me, it's like you're living with a gorilla. I have a certain level of couth, but as much as a gorilla does, right? So just call me Ishmael. Okay, gang. So when it's 44, I'm out of here. I think I've said enough. 2 hours and 44 minutes and 9 seconds. Where's the little arrow? Here we go. 2 hours, 44 minutes and 17 seconds. Right. So get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Go read my stuff. If you like my story about the rainbow gatherings, you'd probably like the story I wrote about rainbow gatherings. So go check that out. And in every day and every way, we take the piece of the earth and make it stronger. And Father Sky, Mother Earth, bless us indeed. Enlarge our territory. Put your hand upon our shoulder and keep us from evil so we will do no harm. I love you guys. So I'll see you in the morning.